Hey everybody, welcome to another quarantine cooking class. Today we are going to be making some buckwheat quinoa crackers. So last week I made a roasted red pepper dip and I had used some crackers with it and put out the question if anybody wanted to see a recipe for making their own crackers. I don't know about you, but in the afternoons, there are times where I just am looking for something crunchy to munch on. And I thought a new feature of Facebook is, I guess we don't have it here, but I wanted to ask a poll to see if anybody felt the same. Some people like sweets. Sometimes I go for sweet, but I found when I was taking sweets out of my diet, it was harder to get foods that had that crunch to it. So I started experimenting with making crackers. Some of them are seedy. These are less refined, like they're a real firm cracker. They've got a nice crunch to them. In fact, I've got some samples here that I made last night. What's nice about these crackers is you can just put them in the oven to bake, and they have this wonderful browned kind of smell to them and flavor to them. But I just want to bring them up a little closer to you so you can see just kind of the texture of them before we get making them. So here is the cracker. Trick with these is to roll them out nice and thin, but they do have some seeds on them. It's because of what I put on top, and we can talk a little bit more about that later on. But what we're going to do now is we are going to make the crackers, and I'll show you the process of doing it. It's really very simple. There's very few ingredients that go into it. Because I don't do grains, I tend to stay away from wheats and barleys and other grains that you might be familiar with. Instead, I'm using a buckwheat and a quinoa. These are not truly grains. They're called pseudo-grains. They are very ancient foods that are very healthy for us. The other thing too is they contain protein. So what's nice about these crackers is you're getting a natural source of protein in them from the grains, well, they're the pseudo grains that you are using. So what we're going to use today, as I mentioned, is quinoa and some buckwheat. All right, so I have some buckwheat here. Now, you can buy buckwheat grains in the grocery store. What I like to do is go to the bulk bin section and see if I can find it there. Whole Foods has it. And just put them into my Vitamix and make them into a flour right then and there so that it's an immediate, they stay stored as seeds when you're not using them, but as soon as you want to use it, you can grind it up. In this case, I found this buckwheat in the store, and that's kind of what got me started wanting to try to make these crackers, because I was like, what do you do with buckwheat flour? So now you get to benefit from that. So we do have the buckwheat flour. All right. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use quinoa. But we're going to put the quinoa into the Vitamix to make it into a flour. So what I'm going to do, I thought I'd experiment. In the past, I just used regular white quinoa. But this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mix. I'm going to add in some of the tricolor quinoa. It has a little different flavor. It'll also give a little bit of different color to the recipe. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1 cup of this. So I'm going to add maybe about 2/3 cup of the white. And I'm going to make a little bit additional because we're going to use some of the flour to dust over the crackers as we're rolling them out if we need it, if they get sticky. That's a good thing to do. If any of you are bakers, you know that when you're rolling things out, you flour the cutting board before you do things. But whoops, got a little excited there. All right, so I'm going to add in, and like I said, I'm going to add a little bit more than a cup so that I have a little bit for dusting if I need it. All right, and please pardon the noise for a few minutes, but just going to start grinding these up. to you how finely ground you want your quinoa. I tend not to like the quinoa whole grains whole in it because they do tend to be very hard, very chewy. So I'm going to try and grind this up fairly finely. I'm just going to tap it down because sometimes it gets, ooh, can you see? It gets very powdery. And I just want to see how many grains I have. Let me show you just how finely ground these are. Take this around to you. All right, so you can see here, it's pretty fine. I'm going to give it one more pulse, just because I'm hearing a few of those grains as I did that. Put it a little higher. This is one of the many things that a Vitamix is great for, to be able to do this. Whew. Don't want to inhale that dust. All right, we can get rid of this Vitamix now because we are done with it. All right, what I want to do now is I want to get my bowl, put my flour in there. I'm going to save some to dust the dough if I need to while I'm rolling it out. But I'm pretty much done with that. So now I have my quinoa in here. I'm going to mix all of my dry ingredients first. So I'm going to add now half a cup of buckwheat flour. Let me just grab a measuring cup for that. Let's see, here we go. All right, so we're going to measure out a half cup of the buckwheat. And you can use the buckwheat flour for dusting your cutting board as well, your rolling out board as well later on. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of salt. Before I add my salt, let's add some psyllium. Psyllium is a great source of fiber, but it also works very much like chia. If you're familiar with chia, when you add liquid to chia, it gets kind of glutinous. It helps bind these grains while they're cooking. It serves like egg white would in a regular recipe. So I'm going to add that tablespoon of that psyllium just to help the binding of the ingredients when they're in there. And then I'm going to add, you know, I always go back and forth about how much salt I want to add to these. Crackers, there's something about crackers that you do want a little bit of salt. I will be sprinkling some salt on after the fact. So, you know, what I like to do is kind of do like 2 good pinchfuls, which, you know, maybe is about 1/2 to 2/3 of a teaspoon. And that's what I just put in right here. All right, so now we have our dry ingredients together. I'm just going to take a whisk and whisk that all together. Make sure that it's evenly combined before I start adding my dry ingredients. And the dry ingredients are nothing more than olive oil and water. Real simple. All right. So that's all mixed up, mixed in, ready to go. So then what I want to do is I want to add about a tablespoon of my, 2 tablespoons of my olive oil. And then I'm going to get down and dirty and use my hands. All right, first I'm going to start just doing a little bit mixing in. You can see here with the tablespoon here. I'm going to wipe that off so I get all that olive oil in there. And I did wash my hands before I started here. So I'm just going to, you know, get it so that it's kind of crumbly. Feels almost like sand that you're playing in. What fun. Adult sand play. Okay. So my hands are still pretty dry from that because that's not that much liquid. What I will do now is I am going to add in a half cup of water. And I have filtered water from my tap here. And start again with that spoon. Kind of moisten the ingredients. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that this is all incorporated into a nice batter. So I added in a cup of water, but I'm going to see whether that's enough. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I don't know why. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, I don't like quinoa. I have actually made this recipe with other ingredients other than the quinoa. A combination that I really like is chickpea flour or, garbanzo beans. Now, you can buy dried garbanzo beans and make it the same way that I just did with the quinoa. Put it into a Vitamix and grind it up, and you get quinoa, garbanzo flour. Or you can buy chickpea flour right here. And what I did was, when I did this, I didn't use all chickpea flour. I used about 3/4 of a cup of chickpea flour, and then I ground up some oatmeal and made some oatmeal flour and added that in. So it came to about a cup of chickpea and oats combined. And what I will do is I will put this up on my website. So if you go to my website, eveyschweig.com, and look under my recipe tabs, this will be under appetizers. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit more water to this because this certainly is not holding together the way I'd like. So I probably put in about easily a tablespoon right there. You don't need much. That was plenty, I think. We'll keep mixing it in. And you'll find as you incorporate it that it thickens up. Part of that is because of that psyllium that you added that's helping holding it together. And you start kind of massaging it just like you would any kind of dough. And it gets all over your hands just like any kind of dough. This is nice because now you can see it's starting to hold into a nice firm ball. This is a good consistency. Wonderful. All right, gonna just mix it in, make sure it's all incorporated. And as I was saying with the chickpea and the oats, so I had about 3/4 cup of the chickpeas, 1/4 of the oats, and I substituted that in for the full cup of quinoa. So try it. Let me know if you try it. See what you think. It does give a different flavor. It probably has less of a protein content because quinoa is considered a complete plant protein, which there's very few plants that are complete, have the complete amount of essential amino acids that we need to make proteins. Just so happens that buckwheat and quinoa both do. All right, so I now have my batter here. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide it in half just because it's easier to roll out if I have 2 small balls rather than 1 large. All right. And before I move on to the next process, I'm going to wash my hands because they are very messy. Wonderful. Okay, that's good. All right, so now I have my dough. Now what I need to do is I need to roll it out thin enough so that it makes a nice crispy cracker. All right. Just let me clean up a little bit here. Move some things out of the way so they don't get dirty. Now there's a couple ways you can do this. One is, the way that I tend to do, is I actually have silicone baking mats that I like to use. You could use instead, now what this does is it creates a surface that isn't sticky. So you don't have to worry about your batter sticking to anything. So what I have here, this is my silicone mat that I've used over many, many, many years. You can tell because when I bought them, they were more this color. And over the years, they have browned. So, and I had just bought some new ones, hoping that they'd be here in time for this class, and they're coming tomorrow. Oh, well. So, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take my batter, and I'm going to put it onto my surface here. I'm just going to flatten it out a bit. I'm just getting it started. I mean, right now, it's probably about ½ inch thick. I want to make it down to about 1/16 of an inch thick if I can. So, I could do this. I could take another silicone mat and put it on top. But for the sake of the demonstration, why don't I take a piece of parchment paper and use that to roll out? And then you can see the difference between what happens with the parchment paper, because the parchment paper doesn't hold its shape as well as the parchment paper might. But it serves as a good demonstration, and it's something that's quick and easy to have a lot more people have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start rolling out this disc. And it'll probably be about 8 inches by 12 inches when I'm done, maybe a little bit more. What I'm aiming for is a nice, thin, even consistency. I should say thickness, right? And I always think I should have rolled it more. So I'm going to take a little time here and really roll this out. I'm going to turn it. As you can see, I keep switching directions so that I spread it out sideways as well as lengthwise. Applying a little bit of pressure. Now, what I wanted to show you is how easily parchment comes up, but it has kind of lost its shape. Can you see? It's gotten a little damp. So if I use my silicone mat, it's quieter for one. But I can really apply some pressure to that and roll that out. Hopefully I didn't do it too thinly. Sometimes if you do it too thinly. I probably should have added some of that flour that I left extra. Now, it's almost a good thing that this happened, so you can see. If this happens, what you do, just scrape it down as you're doing it. I may go back to the parchment. This doesn't. One of the things with the silk these mats is that because they're old, they're not as forgiving as they used to be. So you can see I have some left over here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just take that up and put that right back on my batter. I'm going to now use that flour that I reserved for this purpose. It's good when you do that, right? Take some of that stickiness out. I'm going to go back to that parchment and do that. Let's try that again. Now, what's nice about having the silicone mat underneath is that it allows you to put this right into the oven on a tray without having to try to slide it off. All right, so I'm thinking we have about, you can see how thin that is, about 1/16 of an inch. Now, sometimes what I like to do is, if you can see that some of this is kind of coming off the edge here, I'm just going to cut this, give it a nice straight edge, and I'm going to add this dough maybe to another area, because I want this this dough to be as much of a rectangle as possible in shape. Hey, Anne, so good to see you. Will a food processor work? For making the flours, you could try. It will be more of a crumbly consistency. It won't be as fine a consistency. But so glad you asked that, because not everybody has a blender in their home. I'm going to do the same thing with this side. It's so good to see you, Anne. I hope that you're feeling well and staying safe with all of this stay at home. I sure miss seeing everybody. Okay, so now we have our mat. Can you see how I trimmed that edge? Now comes the fun part, giving it some flavor. So what do we want to do? So one of my favorite is dukkha, which is a combination. It's a nut and spice blend. I'm trying to think what's in it. It is almonds, sesame seeds, fennel, coriander, anise, and a little bit of salt. So what I like to do is give a generous sprinkling over the surface of these, because this is what's really giving the cracker its flavor. So whereas the quinoa and the buckwheat give a little bit of flavor, but more of a consistency, this is what's going to give it the flavor. So you can do this. You can add any spices that you like. I'm also going to add a little bit of black sesame seeds, just for the fun of adding some color to it. Now, I'm also going to add in a little pinch of salt again. And this is a coarse salt that I'm using, like a finishing salt, a kosher salt. All right. What I have learned is once this is down, it is a really good idea to go back with that parchment, take your rolling pin one more time, and roll over it. What you're doing is you're pushing those grains into the upper surface so that they don't come off when you take it out of the oven all baked up and delicious. All right, let's put this over here. Okay, so I have pushed these in now, so much so that I can actually lift this up and show you. Doesn't that look good? Oh, I know, it's so much fun. Okay, now what I do is I actually had a pizza cutter that I no longer use for pizza because I don't make grained recipes, although I do cauliflower pizza, but it works great for making crackers, because what you can do then is just go through and make your slices. I like to do them on a diagonal just so they're kind of diamond shaped when they're done. Okay, I'm going to go like this. Makes them a little fun. All right, so I don't know if you can see, but I have now cut in a diagonal pattern across there. Now, what do? All you need to do is take your cookie sheet, slide this onto your cookie sheet, and pop it in the oven. I bake it, so the trick with crackers is to do them low and slow. So I have found that if I do like around 325, 350, doesn't take so long that I need to go do something. It's too long to bother. But 325, 350, and I do it for about 40 to 45 minutes. The trick is I go through kind of halfway, and if the outer edges look like they're browned and crisped, I'll take them off because I don't want them to burn. And that also helps the next layer of crackers inside that edge to start baking and browning. And then what I'll do is maybe 2/3 of the way through, I'll go in and I'll just take that other piece of parchment, because you can bake with the parchment in the oven as well. Or I'll take another silicone mat, I'll put it on top, and I will flip it. You can put the silicone mat on and another tray on top and just go boop, and it'll fall out. And then this way you're baking the underside. So sometimes what happens is the outer edges are thinner, and that's why they cook a lot quicker. But the ones in the middle tend to be a little bit thicker. And what you don't want to happen is you don't want some to be just not quite cooked through. It's still the moisture in it. Because if you store them all together, just like cookies, they're all going to get soft again. So what you want to do is make sure that you're getting them nice and dried and browned without burning. And I found that about 40 to 45 minutes is a good amount of time for that. Now, time will vary depending on your oven temperature, you know, how your oven actually reads, or the thickness, like how thin did you make your cracker? So that'll make a difference too. If you have a convection oven, that's a great one to put it on. And I can say, you know, for me, I do like at 325, and you could probably do it for about 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, because a little bit shorter time. So, so these are ready to pop into the oven. And like I said, I had done some last night. Now, toppings. So I do the dukkha. This is actually a made mix, but you can very easily make your own dukkha. Maybe I'll post that on the website as well, because I love this stuff. It's actually really good with, you know, a bit of olive oil, and if you're doing bread, like on a piece of bread with olive oil, and sprinkle this on top, yum. But it tastes great on the crackers. I have made these crackers with a rosemary and salt, which is delicious. You know, I just take fresh rosemary, chop it up finely, salt, and then roll it over, because we want it to get set into that dough. Herb de Provence would be an excellent combination as well. An Italian mix is a great one as well. I've done that. You know, kind of tastes like a little bit like a little pizza chip. So, so here's the finished chip. That was an outer edge. This one was the one that I made with the pizza topping. Let's see if you can see the difference. A little bit. You can see the difference. This one had the black sesames in it, so you can see. They both have different flavor. But what's nice about these is, as I said, they have a nice, crisp consistency, right? Very satisfying. And they work great with dip. So this is the dip that I made, the recipe that I made last week, which is a roasted roasted red pepper dip. And as you can see, it scoops really nicely, very firmly, and has a great crunch to it. And the dip adds additional flavor, which is a fun. The crackers don't overwhelm the flavor of the dip. So that is our crackers for today. I hope you enjoy the recipe. I hope you try it. And let me know if the food processor works, or if you have like a bullet or something like that. Always, you know, that's worth trying as well, a different blender. But these are really good. They make a great, you know, they store really well. You can, if they're nice and dried out really well, you can store them in the pantry. You can store them in the refrigerator if you like. But they make for a great last minute, hopefully when we're opening up and being able to entertain again. They make a great appetizer for guests coming over. And they make for a great snack in the afternoon. So I hope you try it. Let me know. Please stay well and eat well. Hopefully you'll try out some of the recipes on my website. Again, it's eveyschweig.com. Everything on the website is about healthy eating and how nutrition actually is medicine. You can eat foods that do not help your health, but you can also eat foods that support good health. And that's what my goal as a health coach is, to help my clients understand that and learn how to cook that way. I also do a blood inflammation test for clients, because there are certain foods that actually cause an inflammatory reaction that can lead to, over time, chronic illness. And it leads to the chronic illnesses that we know today as diabetes, heart disease, obesity. So if you're interested, just hop on over to my website and leave me a message, or IM me here. I'd be happy to talk with you for a little while and explain a little bit more about that. So keep well. I will see you next week. I still haven't decided what we'll be making. If you have a suggestion for me, let me know. I'll look for it down below. We'll see you soon.